Welcome to 2Guys&aTinyDesk, a bi-weekly theological podcast developed by two seminarians to discuss big ideas on a tiny platform. You're invited to join us on a journey of self-discovery and transformation.
Hi, my name is Joel, and my pronouns are he, him, and his.
Hi, my name is Aaron, and my pronouns are they, their, and them.
There's a book called The Dialectics of Enlightenment by Adorno, and he talks about this. He talks about how the upper class feeds a certain ideology to the middle class. And so then the middle class is what is sort of the enslaved group and pushing the status quo, maintaining those on the lower echelons, right, the poor, keeping them down there. So all the while, that 1%, if you want to call it, the upper class, continues to live on and go well. And so in the Dialectics of Enlightenment, they say we have to cut through that. We have to cut through that fakeness and facade. Same thing happens with when you read Foucault in Power Knowledge, in which he goes, you got to break those universal knowledges, which are ideologies at best. They are not true universal. They are ideologies. And you have to see where the cracks are to see what else is coming up from under there. That's the prophetic. That's the prophetic imagination, just rising and saying, there's something else. There's something more. And when we jump scripturally, you see it in Nehemiah, you see it in the prophets, you see it in Jesus, that speak truth to power. In that thing. So let me be quiet for a second.
You awakened something in me. With respect to freedom, I feel as though if there were real or true freedom, there'd be nothing left to fight for. If we were all truly free, there'd be no discussion.
Yes.
It's kind of like we're all seeking God's face. If you actually saw God's face, or if you knew who or what God really was, you'd be God's equal, and because that's unattainable, where do you go from there?
What kind of offset in the universe would that
There's
make?
Nothing left.
Two gods. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it was already one.
If we really had true freedom,
yeah,
what purpose would liberation theology serve? Why would we be here?
That's an excellent point. Balance.
Someone has to, I don't want to say someone has to serve someone, but there has to be some kind of hierarchical system. There has to be a push and pull to drive humanity. If we were all equal, there'd be nothing really to fight for.
I don't know if I agree with that. I was with you all the way. And then
I know what you mean. I'm still with him though. It's because I think we have to come up with a new word for hierarchy, right? And come up with a word that basically says there's groups and there's positions and there's places and there's contexts and there's experiences and they're all valid. Someone's going to be there, right? Statistically, someone's going to fall into one of those things. But the only difference from the original word hierarchy is that it's not as oppressive and absolute. It's not saying you're going to be this and you're going to stay there. That's what hierarchies do because they keep balance of power in each position, right? So we need to come up with a word that says, instead of trying to keep power in each position, they're just valid experiences.
I think we get rid of hierarchy, get rid of the word altogether.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We got to swap it out with a new word. Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying. I think if you have that, people can exist equally.
Right.
And
yes.
I think
and differently.
Differently, yeah.
But
I think
equal,
there's still something to fight for.
Right.
I disagree.
You don't think there's anything to fight for?
No. I don't think people can exist equally. Human nature, I don't think equality or parity is innately human.
I have a question for somebody.
I don't think they are because even Cain and Abel fought in the womb.
You're right.
They did.
You're right.
Is there equality in the Bible?
No.
There may be an assumed image of equality, but it's not there.
I'm not only talking about the human experience. I'm just...
No. There's nothing equal because even in Genesis, Adam and Eve are not equal. Eve is portrayed as coming from Adam, and even Eve takes the fault of sin being entered into the world. So they're not equal by any means.
Lucifer sought equality. That's why he was banished, right? He thought he was.
He wanted to be equal to God.
He thought he was that dude.
Wow.
There is no equality. Wow. And that's the push and pull. You can't have good without evil.
That is a deep point, though.
I got that.
That whole example with the angel Lucifer and God. Lucifer as an angel, a more, I guess, a more advanced being than human, was trying to be equal to God. But aren't we all at the same time as humans trying to be equal to God?
No, I don't think so.
I just think we're seeking more knowledge of, not equality
or
with.
Closer to.
I think you are, but a lot of people want to be as equal sometimes. They get so obsessed with this idea of perfection, perhaps, or even success here in America.
But to me, that lends back to the whole power struggle.
Yeah.
It's about I'm better than you, and so on and so on. So if I feel as I'm better than you, there's never going to be equality. There's never going to be equality on this earth.
But then back to your point, which was brilliant, there can't be equality because there needs to be balance. So there needs to be chaos and there needs to be balance at the very same time. I do agree with that. Right? Dr. Reyes, do you have something you want to add?
I think this is a question of clarification. Are you considering us chaos and the divine full order?
No. We were saying basically that you have to have yin and yang. So we have to have this idea of good and we have to have this idea of what's bad. But we also have to have chaos and we also have to have order or balance. You understand? Like it can't be more than the other because then that becomes a absolute thing.
Then you're saying chaos and order create balance. Are we trying to get balance or are we trying to get ordered? Or
well, all the great mystics and I guess any mystics talk about balance. Any guru talks about balance. Any great teacher talks about balance. Jesus talked about balance. Buddha talks about balance. It's not about all light. It's just about balance, right? And even the mystics, I love the mystics because they do talk about the dark side of it. They acknowledge it. They don't ignore it and they don't dismiss it.
For me, I see scales as you talk. It like if you're holding your hands, each hand would be
like the justice system.
Yeah,
a duality, if you will. Yeah.
But balance is perfection. If you're looking at that, right? If you're trying to get balance, it's when you're at 180 degrees.
Okay, but then if that's the case, how can balance cannot be perfection because then perfection should not include anything negative.
Right. It should be a pure absolute thing.
Why can't perfection have something negative in it?
Then it's not perfection.
If it does, it has to be all negative then. A perfect evil.
Balance and perfection are two different things.
They're an absolute. Perfection is an absolute. You see what I'm saying? So balance cannot be perfect. Balance is the fight and struggle every spirit encounters on a daily basis.
And personally, I feel as though neither can ever be achieved. Balance nor perfection. You're always going to have a little bit more of this than that. One hand is always going to carry more than the other. The husband is going to do more than the wife. The wife might do more than the husband. You're never going to have that 50-50. It doesn't exist.
I think my
it's a concept. I don't think it...
Well, if you think about balance as 50-50, like this precise middle point, then yes, that's unachievable. But I think of when I was younger, riding my bike, and I would have someone on my back pegs. I'd have me riding, and I'd have some groceries or a sandwich with a soda while riding my bike, right? And I'm balancing all these things. My homeboy on the back, street lights, my sandwich I just got from the bodega, and my 50-cent soda that I'm enjoying while riding my bike. For me, that's balance. Because I'm still going through life on a journey, right? Going forward or turning or whatever. There's chaos all around me, but I'm balancing these things.
No, but let me push back again.
Okay.
Is it balance because you're in motion? Because if you stopped, would you be in balance?
No, it's not about being in motion. It's just about you're taking on different things at once, even though you're in it.
No, but my point is this. the concept of even riding a bike
Mm-hmm.
is not about balance. It's about, because you're moving in a particular direction, it appears balanced. But if you look at the act of riding a bike, you're actually fighting forces. You're leaning to your left.
Yeah.
You're leaning to your right.
Right.
That's not balance. You know what balance is?
What's balance?
When you're riding a fixie and you stop at a light.
Yes.
That's balance.
Okay.
Only when you are stopped and you look at both sides of the argument, your left and your right, then you're balanced. But if you're moving in a particular direction, if you're moving toward a particular ideal or ideology, you're never balanced. You're always fighting one against the other. That's how I look at it.
Hmm.
You know, for you to achieve balance, it has to be like the blind symbol of justice. If there's 50 on one side, 50 on the other, then it's balanced because nothing's moving. But the minute you start moving towards something, whether you're studying, whether you're fighting oppression, whether you're whatever it is, balance cannot be achieved. You're just, one day you're a little bit more left, next day you're a little bit more right. If at the end of your journey everything is equal, then you're balanced. But you cannot know balance while you're in a fight. I don't think so.
So this is, for me, you're describing life, right? As long as you're alive, there must be some type of motion.
Yes.
And if there's no motion, you're dead.
Well, if there's no motion, you're going to fall into one category or the other.
Yeah.
Or there will be three categories: your left, your right, or you're dead, like you said. That's, you got to keep learning.
Dr. Reyes, any thoughts?
I'm still on the hierarchical piece.
Let's bring that back.
Holding that one, because I was remembering something when you're saying, so I think what Joel, you were saying, we got to get rid of hierarchy or we need to rename it. Mm-hmm. We don't know if we can get rid of hierarchy. And I was remembering Gandhi when he was trying to reconceptualize how we have villages, how we have towns and stuff like that. And I think he had pinpointed one specific area that would challenge and probably not equate things, but harmonize. And the issue was one of the economics and one of fame. And he said, we need to make lawyers and doctors the same as those who are janitors or anything else for that matter. And so then with that, in that case, when you're looking at societies, we want to go for the one that makes the most money, higher economics, crime bladder. And Gandhi was like, no, we don't need to do that. If we want a village to grow or a group to grow, we need to sort of balance out these economic pieces, saying all of us grow when we're all sort of, working for each other. We need doctors as much as we need janitors, I need someone working on my electrical system as much as I need a medicine person or a dentist or anything for that matter. And so I found that interesting as I'm thinking about that, because he's pinpointing on those things that as you move higher spiritually, I think on the Hindu plane, and when we look at systems, the religious systems actually do away with money. They don't care too much about economics, even though on the ground they're lifted by it. The reason why they survive is because of it. But when they do away with that idea of the economic factor, then equality shows up. And I say that to sort of say, it's interesting. When you look at a scriptural text, you cannot serve God and mammon. You either serve one or the other.
Right.
And so if we are serving the economic, if we're serving mammon, then hierarchy takes a different connotation. Mm-hmm. But if we serve the divine and we're looking to be like the divine, not to be equal to divine, but serving and to be like the divine, right? To mirror the divine, I'm using a very specific term, then the term of hierarchy shifts. Hierarchy is not about up, down, vertical, and one is more powerful than the other. It almost gets flattened out, but it reveals maybe places that you've been to, a deepening maybe, that, you know, that doesn't make them more powerful, but does provide some insight. And that's how I sometimes see things and how we should go. I think oftentimes when we're looking at structures, it could be detrimental because we rely on the topmost structure, the topmost person. We rely on a pastor rather than relying on our community for help. We think that the pastor is the only one that's able to pray over us because we've sort of given them that height, right? Instead of seeing the God in each and every one of us and seeing the power that reveals. And then so with that, I think when we start talking about notions of equality, as you were talking about before, or harmony or perfection, I have a different take on perfection. If we say perfection is absolute, then there's no need for relationality. There's no need for anything because absolute is the utmost, right? There is no need for anything. So then you have authors like Charles Hartshorne, who talks about that. He says, if God is absolute, or if we say that's the absolute, that's everything and nothing. You don't need anything. You don't need absolutely anything at all. Start to use the word. So perfection can't be that, especially when we talk about relationship with the divine. He actually says that perfection is the ability to have the highest possible values. That's the divine, and that's what it means to be perfect. That in every situation, what we can think of, the divine is more than or above that. But like this bicycle that you were talking about, it has to be towards movement. It has to be in a process. It has to be moving for a certain reason because as we progress, God must progress. God grows is another term that I hold to, and that's based off of certain process thinkers. One of them being Hartshorne, another one I think William Dean is another author. He says that the size of God grows because God is the highest of all valuations at any given moment. And so I kind of throw that into the mix there to sort of say, yes, we are always in movement into something. And I think you're right to say that if we stop, then we become stagnant. It becomes sort of like a petrifying, putrefying image that really doesn't do us any good and is some way of holding on to the past, which is like losing, the grip because it's like sand.
Man.
So what you're bringing up right now, Dr. Reyes, are you referring to mutual immanence? That when God grows because we are in motion?
So the idea of mutual immanence is that we're sort of taking in so God grows because God takes in everything. Every decision, every choice that we've made, God takes in. And that means God takes into account all of our values, right? All of our thoughts and ideas, and does something with it. And in the same way we do that, right? Because we do the same thing. If we say that we're the Imago Dei, we're made in the image of God, and part of that is our mentality, how we think, God does something similar in the sense of God takes in the universe, and God grows. God has taken everything into account and then sort of makes a decision and sets it forth as an initial aim for us to take in. That's a process piece, but that's a process of saying how how God is deeply relational with us, right? Sort of like an oval type thinking. That at one point God does give to us something to think about that pushes us in some way.
That's interesting that I know our listeners can't see, but you made a shape of a circle, Dr. Reyes. And yeah, so, we see like a lot of circular symbols around the world that symbolize life, God, completeness, community, all these synonyms. So let me see if I'm understanding this right. Are you saying that we affect God just as much as God is affected by us?
I think in some way that's the case. Yeah, I believe that, and that's because of the fact that I hold to process thinking, and process thinking says that God feels. That God feels the universe. God takes in the universe, and I am a part of that universe. It's not that Jesus wept, but Jesus becomes an example of how God weeps. And I think whenever we weep, whenever we're saddened, I do believe that's something that the divine is also sad about and expresses and feels. God feels through us, and God expresses through us in some way. So if I were to say, one thing is I believe God is deeply saddened at sort of like this dissension and how we are always at war with one another to try to be the ultimate. And yet, the divine is always calling us to come into sort of like a oneness or unity. With all our differentiations, it's not to become like the one ultimate that there's nothing else, but this oneness is that full differentiation, the full plethora of colors or beings, categories, you name it. There's a oneness to that. Because we realize that we're all on this earth, we're all in this cosmos, this universe, and we all exist. And there's no need to have one over the other, but a realization that this differentiation is beautiful and valuable and says something. And so sort of like that awareness and oneness, I think, is what the divine is trying to bring out through us in different ways. And sometimes it gets misconstrued because, we sort of are putting together other agendas.
Thank you for saying that. As you were speaking, my imagination was going because I was recalling when I was a little boy, my mother told me that when it rained, that was God crying. And I had believed that for so long, like even into my teenagehood, that every time it rained, I felt that God was sad, so this is in reference to what you mentioned, that a relational God through process thought feels. So, I thought it was just really interesting that I had that experience early on, that I was taught that God is feeling and God feels sad when it cries, when it rains, and those were his tears or God's tears. Because it always like made me stop and just kind of reflect on, why is God sad? And as I got older, I was like, damn, it needs to be raining every day then, because all the amount of things that are happening, like God is sad every day, every moment of the day. When I look at these statistics that blow my mind as to the amount of people that are dying every minute, suicide every hour, rapes, abductions, all these statistic numbers that are happening moment by moment around the world. It was just like, why is this Why is it not raining every day? So then it allowed me though to see that God feels sadness through other different ways, not just through rain, so just thought I'd add that.
I would say that the scientific answer is it doesn't rain all the time. If it did, we'd be flooded. So I do want to lay that down. Let's scientifically it does do that. However, what you bring in is an interesting point. When you look at rain, it's symbolic of something. It's maybe symbolic of sadness, right? And I think that is the part that we need to be aware of. Why am I sad, or why do I feel sadness at this moment? And then it's all these pieces that you're bringing up, right? It's a reminder, it's a symbol of that. But then we also have to be reminded that rain has validity and importance in this world because it nourishes the ground, provides water and resources, and then it allows for things to grow. So wherever you see death, there's also places where it grows. I also want to say that in that same way, when we feel the sadness, maybe we even tear, but it births something in us. That gets articulated in some way in terms of growth. Why am I crying? Why do I feel the sadness? All these things you mentioned, and then you express that in some way, in some form of activism, in some form of writing, in some form of poetic piece, in some form of artistic piece, or leading a people or a congregation to become aware of it and moving. And that's where all of those pieces, that complex combination of things come together, and we call that the divine working.
If I may, going back to the rain piece,
yes,
and the push and pull, we are all part of the universe. So if it's raining for you, it's sunny for somebody else at the same time. So it can't always rain because, to Dr. Reyes' point, we would be flooded. But there is no joy without pain. There is no good without evil. It's all part of the same. They're just different cogs on that same wheel. One might be the polar opposite. One might be up when the other is down. One might be left when the other is right. North, south, east, and west. There are too many examples to name. But the point is, if there isn't, they all coexist. Now, maybe your experience is that you are experiencing more rain than sun. Maybe your life was filled with more rain than sun, but it doesn't mean that the sun doesn't shine. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And then there are those who, for the most part, their lives were sunny, like the 1%. Nothing is wrong. They're never food insecure. They're never homeless. They never have job issues. They always live a good life, but it doesn't mean that the other side doesn't exist.
Right.
If they always live a good life, and this is what I'm saying too, so many people in that 1% commit suicide.
They realize that their money cannot buy their happiness.
You want me to give you my answer to that? As to why they commit suicide? Your life cannot be all good. You cannot live and just have everything given to you. Because if you don't understand what it's like to work for something, everything's given to you, those are the ones who end up committing suicide. The ones who made $500,000 every year, and then now they're down to $60,000, they're jumping off of a roof because it's an economic downturn. They don't understand that, okay, it can't be sunny all the time. So the same is true.
Okay.
Too much of sun is no good. Too much of rain is no good. But the balance is in you moving towards something. You're going to have some rainy days. You're going to have some sunny days.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps you, to your point, balanced.
Yeah.
So then to loop this all up into prophetic imagination, how can we best find the balance in prophetic imagination?
Professor?
Anybody?
When am I starting? When are you making me start?
I can start. I have an idea.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I have an idea. I think
I'm an equal for you here.
I think when you first learn to ride a bike, they tell you don't look at your pedals.
Yeah.
They tell you look off into the distance, because what happens is that as you look off into the distance at a particular point, it kind of serves to balance you, because as you're looking and you pedal with the left, you lean left, you pedal with the right, you lean right, but because you're focused, your body just kind of
helps you stabilize.
It stabilizes on its own. So if you're focused on Christ, if you're focused, whatever your focus is, but right now, because we're thinking theologically, if your focus is on Christ, you're going to have your bad days. You're going to have your good days. But if your focus is the same, you're going to have that balance, so to speak, if you will. But it will level you off to some degree. And I think thinking of it that way kind of keeps you going. Yeah. It keeps you balanced, but it keeps you going as well. Because to Dr. Reyes' point, I think the closer you get to God, the bigger God gets, but you never actually touch God. You never actually reach God. So it just kind of keeps you...
Or the fullness of God.
It just keeps you at it.
You can reach like a glimpse of God. You know, you find God in nature. You can find God in a loved one.
It keeps you motivated.
But yeah, definitely. I like that.
That's interesting. I was going to say, I mean, the prophetic imagination is not... I think prophetic imagination is a very sobering piece. If we look at the prophets in Scripture, in particular, I think it's Jeremiah. I think Jeremiah is
prophet, yes.
In which, you know, he wasn't sugarcoating it. It was the worst thing for him, you know. You know, he's in a pit, roads go down, you know, or any of these other things that he had to do. He was realistic. And I think there's two things for him. Number one, he was realistic in the prophetic imagination. And yet, at the same time, he also had another reality, and the other reality was the divine. To knowing that justice will be done. Maybe not in his time, but maybe soon. And for him, I think that was his harmonizing piece. You know? That if I shout long enough, if I keep talking and revealing that which is true, I can defeat this ideology. Someone will listen to me. It'll get repeated long enough so that down the road, someone will know that we need to do the same thing. And he found his peace in that. So maybe for me, when I talk about the prophetic imagination, we need to find our peace in things, which helps harmonize things. And peace is sort of like a letting go of what you think and what you believe should happen, and seeing where it goes. And that bothers us because we're always seeking order, right? We want to make sure things happen. But in a way, we kind of have to let it go. Similar to, I'm going to go through the voting process. I'm going to vote for who I'm going to vote for. And that's where I kind of have to let my peace, you know, be there and say, now I need to trust that the people in the back are going to do the just thing, that the people in the Senate and in the House, we pray, are doing their thing, and ensuring that justice is done. But crying out, being active in ways that we can, whether it be poetic, whether it be in poetic activism, whether it be on the pulpit speaking truth to power, whether it be helping the homeless, because we still believe that is something that we should do. Excuse me, whether we have the money or not. Maybe even instilling the idea it's not all about money, it's not all about fame, but it's about that something else, and instilling a prophetic imagination in other people of what that something else is. That's not connected or related to money being the piece. I want to hold on to the idea that the prophetic imagination imagination pushes against mammon. It pushes against power. It pushes against economy or economic pieces. It pushes against fame. It pushes against those things. And I would even say it pushes against dominating theologies and cracks them and actually creates incoherent theologies, theologies that don't work, but that work for the purpose of justice.
That's deep, Dr. Reyes. I don't think they're going to get that one. They might have to play this over and over. Years from now, they'll get it. But that was ahead of its time. That's deep.
But this isn't, I mean, don't you hear that?
Yeah.
Right now, we're fighting against the thing. Hey, I'm going to be real, because I think that once Christianity connects to empire, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's a dominant theology. And you know what? Sometimes we favor church fathers that are held in dominant theologies, and we forget other theologies.
Yes.
That speak freedom, that speak truth to power, and those are the ones we need to be looking at.
Talk about it.
And when we see, as a matter of fact, when we see weak theologies, we should really listen to them, because they're breaking against dominant theologies.
Yes.
Strong theologies, muscle man theologies, bullying theologies. And I think that's what we need to be aware of. And here's the thing, and here's the metaphor of the scriptural text I read. And please, guys, just help me out on who it was. I think it was the prophet Elisha, that when God says, he goes, I want to see you, God. No, I want to. Oh, God put him on a mountain, and there was like a thunder. There was a thunder or a mountain destroyed. And he says, God is not there. There was a rushing violent wind. God is not there. But in a whisper was when he covered himself and said, God, you are there. I think it was the prophet Elijah. That's a weak. That's a whisper. This is why a lot of times when I speak in my class, I hold on to words like haunting, because hauntings are whispers that keep bothering you, but are really weak. They're really nothing, because you can, whatever, I ate something, it's but those hauntings, those weak things that are bothering you, or and I don't know where it says that the whining woman. That's not really weak. No. That's a theology that has to say something about justice.
Yes.
That needs to be done. A whisper that says justice. God is there in the whispers. In the little whispers and crying out. That's where God is at. And we get sold dominant theologies because it really looks good.
Wow! I can't wait to watch the next episode of 2 Guys and a Tiny Desk. Don't forget to hit the like button